Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm reviewing The Maid by Nita Prose, and I gave this book a 5 out of 5. Before I go into my full book review, today my Booktuber Shoutout goes out to Nyx Reads. I am linking her channel because I actually came across her channel last year when she did a full review for The Maid, and it got me hooked to read The Maid, which took me a year to read. Sorry. I'll link her channel down below. She does mostly hauls, TBRs, wrap-ups, and everything, so give her some support. And as always, before I go into my full book review, I always appreciate it if you're watching this video to please hit the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and if you have read this book, The Maid, I'd love to hear what you thought down below. This book is pretty new. I think it actually won like some awards on Goodreads. So it was published last year in 2022, and the genre is fiction, thriller, murder mystery, and for me, it felt like a bit of slice of life. A bit about the author, Nita Prose. So her birth name is actually Nita Provenance or Pronovis, but obviously she changed it to be Nita Prose, which I think is a very clever pen name as an author. She is a fellow Canadian. She resides in Toronto, and this is also her debut novel, which is pretty exciting. I feel like I've been on a roll on reading like debut authors, which is pretty cool because I think it takes a lot of time and effort to write a book, and I'm very impressed when anyone publishes their first book. So Nita Prose has actually been in the industry, the publishing industry, for a long time, and she is currently the vice president and editing director at Simon & Schuster, which is a big publishing house in Canada. I don't know if in the US, but definitely in Canada. And I think it's really cool because I think through her exposure of, reading other books that have been successful through her publishing house, she probably knows what's good to write, what's not good to write, and she probably has lots of experience as a reader herself on what gets the people going. As I was saying, this book, The Maid, is her debut novel, and she was inspired to share the story because back in 2019 she was staying in London on a business trip, and she came back to a very clean hotel room, which I'm sure all of us have experienced, and it made her think about how unseen the maids are at hotels, and then that's how she got the idea to write the story, which I think is pretty neat. Now, the premise and the story of The Maid. So I'm just gonna go through the characters because I feel like it is definitely like a cast of characters. I think if you read any of Agatha Christie's murder mystery, it kind of gives like that type of vibe as well. So the first character I would like to say is the hotel, the Grand Regency. And then in this hotel, we have Molly, the maid, and she's our protagonist. The story is told through her eyes, and she lives with her grandma, who's always been kind of like her voice of reason and someone that teaches her how the way our society is, because we learn very quickly that Molly doesn't really get social cues and can't really read social expressions. She can never tell when someone is laughing at her or with her, so Gran is kind of like her mentor. Her parents unfortunately left her at a very young age, so her grandma is her main provider. And we also learn right away that her grandma, who she lives with full time, actually passed away several months prior. So, now Molly is kind of left on her own devices, and she still struggles with learning how to be part of society. However, one thing she's really good at is cleaning the hotels, and she does a very, very good job at it. Very precise. She knows there's a thing to, there's order and rules, and she follows them to a T. So at this hotel, she has her boss, Mr. Snow, who is either the manager or the owner of the hotel. We have Mr. Preston, who is the doorman, and we also have, like, in a way, Molly's nemesis, who is like the head maid. Her name is Cheryl. And then also at this hotel, we have Ronnie, the bartender, and Juan Michelle, I think, or Juan Manuel, who works in the kitchen. And then we also have Mr. Black and Giselle, who's his wife, who are like frequent guests, and also the Chens. And why I'm explaining all these characters is, I already said before, the genre of this book is murder mystery. So one day when Molly is doing her shift, she's cleaning a room, and Mr. Black, a frequent guest, is dead. So basically, this book then quickly unravels to who killed Mr. Black and who are the suspects. I'm gonna stop there because I think this book, it was a 5 for me, so it was like super fun to read, and it's also a quick and easy read, and I just love the whole cast of characters. Common themes in the book that I found is because Molly is, a bit I don't want to say naive, but she definitely doesn't get social cues. So for things are for her very black and white. So I feel like a lot of things I learned in this book is that everything you need to be a nice person you learn probably from your childhood or from your youth, probably from your parents or your teachers if you had good parents, good teachers, obviously, and a good community that you were raised in. But this book really, I think, drives home the point that, you know, life can happen to you and things can go every which way, but you have the choice to be a nice, good-hearted person. And all these things you are born with, I think, as a baby, and hopefully you can learn when you're very young. Other common theme is you only need the simple things in life. Molly has a very routine life, and I think it works really well for her. I mean, obviously, we all deserve to want more if you're able to work for that for yourself. But I think this book really drives home the point of, you know, life is better when it's simple. And then the last common theme I learned is learning, it's an important lesson to learn. Like it's easy to be a nice person, but you also have to protect yourself. And when you're a really nice and good-hearted person, you believe that for everyone else in the world, but that's not true because some people will take advantage of you. So I think this book also drives home the point of learning who to trust and who not to trust. Things I didn't like in this book, obviously I gave it a 5 out of 5, but you can always find things you do not enjoy in the book. So I thoroughly enjoyed this book, but I guess I can see why people wouldn't like this book is you do have to suspend some, you have to practice some disbelief because there's lots of conveniences that happen in this book that probably is hard to believe. But I think that's why it drives it to be a very fun and entertaining read for me at least. Things I did like, I liked all the sayings that Gran has. So as I mentioned, the grandma has recently passed away a few months ago. However, when Molly goes through her train of thought and her experiences, she always has her grandma's voice of reason in the back of her head. So the grandma, she's kind of like obviously of an older generation, so she has a lot of like, you know, cheesy, quirky sayings that, you know, I've heard in passing from pop culture, but you don't really hear nowadays. So I really enjoyed that. Like, you know, if someone's a good egg or bad egg, or honesty is the only policy, or rise and shine, it's a new day. I just love the grandma's voice in the book, even though she was not a present, alive character. Other things I enjoy is Molly's outlook on life because of her grandma. She is very positive. She, you know, she thinks that having a routine really and having things neat and order really gives you a good life. And that really resonates with me too because I'm a creature of habit. And then also the final thing I really enjoy in the book is the cast of characters. If you're a fan of like murder mysteries, I think a good cast of characters is really important because you always need some comedy, some drama, and this book was just a good blend of both. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 3.83 out of 5. I found it kind of surprising because I really enjoyed it. I thought this book would be on average a 4 at least, but I guess that's not the case. Reasons why people didn't like it was people thought the characters were dated in their behavior. I can agree with that just because, you know, it was kind of cheesy, like there was a hotel, there was a murder, like who's like guilty. And I think like murder mysteries always kind of tend towards like an older, nostalgic feeling. People also didn't like the characters in general, but especially Molly and her like neurodivergent behavior, her quirky characteristics to explain when she's just kind of like a-hole to people, which I can see, but for me, that didn't take away from me enjoying the book. And good reviews where people thought it was entertaining, they thought it was witty, they thought it was a great combination of it being cozy, dark comedy, and a mystery and a thriller, which I 100% agree with, obviously. Why I think you should read this book. I think you should read this book if you had read Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine because I find Eleanor and Molly have lots of parallels as protagonists. I also think you should read this book if you like murder mysteries. Now I'll share how this book made me feel because I always like to ask people if they recommend me a book, how it made them feel. Because if you ask me a week, a year, 5 years from now, I probably won't remember exactly what this book was about, but I'll always remember how it made me feel. So The Maid by Nita Prose, this book, when I finished it, it made me feel very delightful. Like, the characters are great. I love all the interpersonal relationships, and I just love Molly and her journey in this book. So this book made me very delighted or delightful when I finished it. Thank you for watching until the end of my book review for The Maid by Nita Prose. If you read this book, I'd love to hear what you thought in the comments down below. And if you want to join me next time, I'm starting back into the sci-fi genre. I guess I'm a sci-fi person now. I'm reading the first sci-fi fiction published book by a Black American female author. It's called Kindred by Octavia Butler, and I'm super excited to dive in. Thank you again for watching as always, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!